this is Whitney.
And John.
And this is The Concrete Note.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Concrete Note. My name is Dr. John Belkowitz, and today we have one of the most awesome segments that we've ever put on in our podcast history, and that is an interview with one of the co-founders of Giatec, and a company that is bringing new and emerging technologies to our awesome industry, effectively saving the world with all the concrete in it. Ali, good morning, and how are you doing, sir?
Good morning, John. I'm very happy to be with you, and I'll be more than happy to have a discussion together about different things in the concrete world.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, all the way from where y'all at, Ottawa, Canada?
Yes, we're based out of Ottawa, Canada. It is snowing here, so.
What's the temperature over there right now?
In centigrade, it's -1, actually, -3 actually. Feels like -3. I don't know how is that in Fahrenheit.
In Fahrenheit, it's pretty dang cold. Pretty dang cold. Yeah, I think the conversion is like multiply by 1.8 and add 32.2 to it. But yeah,
it should be around 32 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oof. That is an ugly temperature, but you know what? Cold is good. Precipitation is better. We're at 23 degrees Fahrenheit, which in centigrade is cold as all get out. So I feel your pain. And I'm excited we are both in closed doors doing this podcast today. So without any further ado, before we dive into our questions, what I wanted to do is give you the chance to give our audience a quick peek into your world, who you are, what company you're a part of, and what you do to save the world with all the concrete in it.
Okay, well, my name is Ali Alizadeh. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Giatec. 8 years ago, I started this company with my longtime friend, Dr. Poriakowicz. We both graduated in PhD and from civil engineering, and we saw a huge gap between what we were researching on and what the industry was dealing with. And that was basically crumbling bridges and concrete material that was deteriorating. And we set ourselves up to do something about it. And that's how we started Giatec. But prior to that, all of my degrees, undergrad, master, and PhD, were in concrete. And even at the PhD level, I got into nanotechnology applications in the concrete science. And we tried really hard to bring those sophisticated methods and technologies to life by enabling various stakeholders in the concrete industry with advanced technologies and easy-to-use methods and solutions that can help them with their ongoing operations, anywhere from production, delivery, placement, and inspection of concrete structures. I think over the past 8 years, we have done a relatively good job in terms of bridging that gap. Our technologies have been already used in more than 70 countries worldwide, and is growing because we are trying to make it as simple as possible to bring value at the right time, at the right place, to the right people.
Awesome. And I don't know if you remember when we first met, but it was, I think I had a full head of hair at that time. And what I absolutely appreciate,
kids, I guess.
Yeah. What I appreciated about you was, you always had a passion for concrete. When I knew you, and we met at, ACI 236D, the subcommittee for nanotechnology and concrete, which is now its own committee. But what I appreciated was not just your knowledge base. And Ali, let's let it be said that you are a brilliant man, and Puria as well. But your ability to connect the bookcrete to the labcrete all the way through the realcrete. And that, especially in some of these ACI committees where you have folks coming out of university, it's very, very hard to find somebody who knows how to take the technology that they have become an expert in to bridge that gap, as you just said, to ultimately not only make money, which of course is very important, but what you have done, and I wrote an article about what you did for me as a concrete technician, is literally, in my opinion, save the world with all the concrete in it. And you should be very proud of yourself and your company. And that's why I was so excited to do this interview, because I'm going to ask you some questions that have been on my mind when it comes to concrete IoT,
Sure.
concrete durability, and I'm excited to get into that. So are you ready for this?
Sure, yeah, of course. I'll be happy to share the experience I have had in this field over the past 15, 20 years.
Okay, good deal. So first question is, why do you hate asphalt? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. My first question is, why concrete? Why did you fall in love with it, and when did you fall in love with it?
That's a very good question, and even today, one of the stickers that we give away at the trade shows is I Heart Concrete sticker that people use on their hard hats or luggages, and it goes back to when I was at the undergrad level, almost 20 years ago. I was doing a degree in civil engineering, and obviously you're learning about structural design, asphalt for sure, and concrete as one of the construction materials. And at that time, this back in the day, we were a group of students who came together, and at that time we realized that there's a competition called ACI Student Competition for High Strength Concrete. And it was a cube, like 2-inch by 2-inch cube that we needed to make, and that would have been tested for the highest strengths, and you would get a reward or for having the highest strength concrete. And it was a really interesting challenge for us, and we had to research anything from the cement side to admixtures, aggregate, and supplementary cementitious materials, and put these together in different recipes and different curing conditions to come up with a material or a cubic concrete sample that has a very high strength. And as a student, I'm sure you appreciate that's really fascinating to get to know the world of concrete and to understand and discover how the chemical reactions happen between the concrete ingredients. So we spent about a year on that project, and we ranked number one in Iran, where I did my undergraduate studies, and our university sent our group of students to Canada, where at that time ACI Fall Convention was being held in Toronto. Mm-hmm. That's 2000, year 2000 actually. And we ranked third in that competition year. When we got that achievement, we were so excited. As young students, we said, like, this is the result of all this hard work that we've done, and all this knowledge that we have collected together. Let's continue this. So when we went back, we continued the research on concrete materials. We started looking at other aspects of concrete, not just the strengths, but also durability, exposure to marine environments, how to make concrete more resistant to corrosion of rebar inside of it, and things like that. And that evolved into different projects and multiple projects at the research level. And at some point we said, let's go to the industry and find how the industry is dealing with these challenges. So we got a couple of projects from various companies, and we took those as R&D consulting work for these companies inside the University of Tehran, where I was doing my undergrad. And that grew to more work and more research, and more people got excited about it and joined our group, and it grew to about 30 people of researchers working on concrete. We established a concrete material, construction materials institute at that time, and it was really, really fascinating to know more and more about the concrete science and concrete materials. But I wanted to go even deeper than that, and and I wanted to know how these chemical reactions and the cement structure is forming and how it's contributing to the properties of concrete. So that's why I decided to come to Canada to do my PhD in the cement nanotechnology, actually with one of the world famous researchers in the cement science, Dr. Jim Baudouin. And I spent 4 years looking at the molecular structure of cement and how we can change the nanostructure of cement and control or tailor its properties for different conditions. And that was even more exciting for me. And for me, it was fascinating because in civil engineering, you have a whole bunch of guidelines and design specs and things like that to design a structure. But when it comes to concrete, it's all science and it's discovery and it's fascination about how this material behaves. Although you have simple ingredients of cement, aggregated water, and mixtures, the way you mix them, the way you cure them, can totally change the properties of concrete. And exposure to different environments, it can have different behavior. I don't know if you probably know this, but a concrete material, a typical material, can experience up to 100 different chemicals in its lifetime.
Right.
So if you think about it, these are anything from sulfates and all kinds of calcium-based materials and silicates and water and other solutions and alkaline materials and other things that get together in concrete or exposure to ambient conditions. And you can imagine the chemical reactions between these materials can result in different type of performance and behavior and response. So that's what really fascinates me, and it's never ending. As we go forward, we understand and discover new things about it. There are many researchers nowadays who are working on the molecular dynamic modeling of concrete, other properties of concrete, and I think it's a field that, as it's interdisciplinary with chemistry and other areas of science, has a lot of room to grow and a lot of room for discovery and contribution.
Oh, totally agree. And that's going to piggyback on one of my other questions later. But, the great thing about these podcasts and learning about things, from these questions is they sometimes bring up other questions. So do you feel, so this is, an extra question, sorry. Do you feel that the American Concrete Institute really helped create your foundation or your passion for concrete, or at least gave you some of the tools, or at least helped develop your relationships with the folks in the industry?
Absolutely. ACI and the student competition that they had was the turning point in my life and career. Everything that happened after that was the result of the excitement that was built up in that student group as a result of attending the ACI competition. And so I think they are doing a phenomenal job in educating, connecting the students together and building a network of young professionals and researchers in this area who are later going to join different areas of the construction profession, or whether it's in academic life or in the industry. But that's started where everyone is just at the beginning of their learning stage.
Right.
And when you're an undergrad student, ACI is providing free membership to students and provides a ton of educational material and resources and networking possibility and opportunity for students to attend the conventions. So I absolutely agree with your comment that their role is pivotal and critical in shaping the future of the concrete industry.
Amen. Great. Well said. All right. Question number 2. What do you feel is the future of concrete IoT for making real-time decisions in the concrete industry?
Okay. Well, maybe for your audience who may not know IoT, it stands for Internet of Things. And that's essentially getting things or objects connected together or to the web network through internet connectivity. And it's becoming really easy to achieve this as data connectivity is getting easier. The data coverage is widespread. The data communication is now much cheaper than before. The sensors to measure different types of properties are becoming smaller and cheaper. And everyone nowadays has a smartphone and access to internet. So the connectivity that we are expecting from IoT to bring in the world and connect things together is now becoming more and more easier and much more easier than before. So, but how this is going to help our industry? Well, first of all, as I said, the sensors and the measurements are getting easier and easier. There are new ways of collecting data that were not possible in the past. This could be anything from embedding sensors in the concrete, installing sensors on concrete structures, having cameras that record different types of properties of concrete, tools that detect damages through visual imaging or other types of scanning of concrete structures. And then at the end of the day, the data that is collected, and that's the foundation of IoT that you need to have. It's like massive data that you need to have, is going to be transferred over to the internet through the cloud communication between these endpoints of sensors and the cell networks. And so that's essentially the infrastructure for collecting data. And that's easy. You can do that, and as I said, because it's now simpler than before, you can implement the foundation of IoT and the infrastructure of IoT in almost any industry. But what's critical is what you're going to do with that data. How are you going to bring value and analyze that data to offer a new type of insight, a new type of wisdom to these stakeholders? Mm-hmm. So that's the part that I think we as researchers and we as concrete scientists or professionals need to focus on. Right. The rest, the infrastructure, the sensor part of it, is pretty much what's being involved in the IT world. Electronics are getting, as I said, more sophisticated and streamlined. So we need to focus on the value that we can bring on the data. So, but if you think about it, concrete is the most widely used material in the world, with more than 20 billion tons produced annually in the world. Like that's the number 2 material consumed by humans after water. Right. And if you think about it, if you put sensors in these materials produced across the world, we can collect massive amounts of data all the way from the beginning of concrete production, when ingredients are mixed together and concrete is fresh and it's in the liquid stage, sort of, and it's transitioning through that chemical reactions to a hardened material and cures, and after that it is exposed to ambient conditions and exposure conditions to aggressive environments. So if we can collect the concrete behavior and concrete response to all of these changes throughout its life cycle, we're going to end up with a massive amount of data. And this data, if it's combined with other type of data, so you can imagine we have other type of data from producers on the ingredients, on how the concrete was mixed and how it was delivered. We can have data from the contractors on how they cured, how they finished the job. And we can have data from the structure, the exposure conditions. And if you overlay the internal parameters that are measured by the sensors with external parameters that are collected through the users, we can understand new levels of insight that were not possible in the past. Right. And that's what excites me about the IoT application in the construction industry. The possibility of discovering and predicting the behavior of concrete is something that is now achievable, and I believe that's going to revolutionize the concrete industry for the better. And it's something that is long due for this industry. We have been, as you know, using methods like slump tests that have been used in hundreds of years in this construction sector. And we need to change that. And I think we have all the resources, we have all the technological needs or precursors that are essential for that revolution. So we are in a defining moment of, I think, in the concrete history to make an impact. So that's, I think, the exciting part about the IoT application in the concrete world.
So, I agree with everything you just said, but I want to play the devil's advocate for a second. You say that we have everything that we need for this revolution. Are we ready? When I say we, I mean the industry as a collective, the 80% of the industry that has a tendency of moving slower. Are we ready for this revolution?
Very good question. That's one of the aspects that I think we are ready. We're absolutely ready. And let me explain why. You are absolutely right. You have a point there that this industry has not embraced change for a long time. It's very traditional. It's very resistant to change, and it's heavily regulated. There are specifications, codes, and everyone is concerned about the liability associated with applying change. Right. But I'm actually optimistic because the new generation of engineers who are joining this industry are demanding this change. Right. They're demanding this revolution. They're grown up in a world that is full of data connection, smartphones, educational materials that are accessible through online courses. It's essentially inherent to them and essential part of their lives.
Right.
So when these new generation of people are joining the industry, I think they will drive this change, in my opinion. And I was reading an article that this industry, if they want to attract talent, which is one of the biggest challenges right now in the construction world, to hire talent and hire new people, is to embrace technology. Right. If they want to attract new hires and bright students and bright engineers, they have to incorporate technology into every aspect of their operations, all the way from field operations to design and different practices, production, delivery. And I think the companies who are going to be at the forefront of that are going to absolutely benefit from the impact they're going to see, not only in their differentiation in the market, but also attracting and retaining talent as their workforce.
And you've already seen companies that are adopting to these new technologies attract, I don't want to say those higher level of folks in the industry, but I mean that's what it is. It's companies that embrace change, that embrace that disruption, or start doing things that are more disruptive to the status quo. They're starting to bring in those people who are going to make them or help them move forward. So I totally agree with that. Oh, wonderful answer. Okay, so my next question. There has been some discussion on the use of lithium batteries creating a cataclysmic waste stream. Now, do you feel that this is bullshit, or do you feel like this is a real world problem?
Good question. And right from the beginning, we faced that criticism from the incumbents in this industry. And let me put it this way: if you want to change the world, that's the last thing you need to be concerned about. And let me say why it's the last thing. There are many ways that we are, as a community, as an industry, are contributing to the sustainable development of infrastructure. And that's anywhere from concrete material ingredients all the way to new types of materials and mixtures that are helping reduce the carbon dioxide emissions associated with the cement use. Many companies who are working in that area. And we are, as an industry, trying to become more and more sustainable and have less impact on the environment and sustainability of infrastructure. But as it relates to batteries, there are, I think, some aspects of the new technologies that people have probably ignored, those who are criticizing this type of technology for embedment in the concrete. Well, first of all, the new generation of batteries are totally different. Mm-hmm. The way that the lithium batteries are working today are absolutely different from the previous generation of batteries that were hazardous materials to the environment. And that's well established. Everyone knows about it. You know, if you were going to tell that an old generation of battery is going to be used in the concrete, exposed for leakage, mm-hmm. yes, I would be probably concerned. But the new generation of batteries, the way that the chemical materials are embedded in those batteries are going to make them less prone for this type of leakage and less prone to this kind of contamination. Mm-hmm. On top of that, these batteries are contained in an epoxy potted enclosure mm-hmm. that encapsulates the battery itself. So there's absolutely no way, even if you were using the old generation of batteries, for the chemicals to leak out of the sensor itself. And thirdly, even if it leaks out, I know we were talking about obviously lithium. The amount of lithium that is leaked out of the concrete through the battery is much less than the lithium ions that are actually in the water, the tap water itself, that is used in the same concrete material. So we're talking like one sensor or two sensors per floor in a high-rise building. And the amount of lithium that is used in those couple of sensors is much, much less than the amount of lithium that is actually in the water that is used for the production of concrete in that floor. So from that perspective, I think it's absolutely BS.
That's something that I don't think anybody has, on my side, has ever heard. And, the biggest problem with the question that I asked you is that it takes away from what your technology is doing for the industry. And I said it earlier. A lot of what you and Giatec has done is create technology that is effectively saving the world with all the concrete in it, giving us ways to make concrete stronger and last longer. And if we took a step back and looked at the materials that we're using, I can't remember the exact numbers, but Portland cement production accounts for 3 to 5% of the world's CO2 emission. Every time we have to rip and replace...
Actually, 5%. Yeah.
5%. Every time we have to rip out and replace a concrete structure, there's a certain carbon footprint associated with that rip and replace, as well as wasting that concrete that has to go into a landfill. So what you...
Absolutely. And so the impact is, as you said, is absolutely on the concrete side itself. If you can reduce the amount of cement that is used in the concrete, but achieving the same amount of strength or performance, that's absolutely revolutionary. And that's one of the things that our smart concrete sensors, especially SmartRock, is doing, is that information about the concrete performance in real time is fed back to the producers so they can optimize the amount of cement that they add in the concrete, because now they have real-time information, whereas in the past, they had no clue about the concrete performance in the job site, so they would play conservatively by mm-hmm. adding more cement and protecting themselves from liability issues.
Oh, absolutely.
But with this new technology, they are decreasing the cement content by as much as 15%. And that's huge impact on the sustainability and the carbon footprint that we're going to leave as an industry together.
Have you got has Giatec written an article about that?
We actually have a case study with a couple of our partners in the U.S. who are ready-mix producers who have used this technology, the sensor technology, to optimize the amount of cement that they put in the concrete.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I would love to. I'm going to share that article. I'll go back on your LinkedIn and check it out, or your Giatec, and I'd like to share that because that's an important part that, folks aren't recognizing, at least from where I see it, that there is a sustainable development portion, besides the value-added performance that you're getting, but sustainable development, that's huge, and that's some beautiful stuff.
And it's not just the carbon dioxide emissions associated with the cement production. If you reduce the cement, obviously you're reducing the amount of carbon dioxide emissions. But as you know, in the process of clinker production, there's a lot of water that is used.
Right.
So we are saving that water. There's a heating process for the clinker in the clean kilns, and that heat is also going to be saved. So there are different aspects to it, not just the carbon dioxide. And and that's the last thing you want to start talking about these sensors before knowing the details about their technology and about how they are being used. And IoT is changing the whole world.
Yeah.
And why we are not embracing the concrete, I'm surprised by these critics. It's the same as Uberizing the taxi industry. Like Uber came in, and they started rolling out this new model of commute between different parts of the same city, and taxi drivers started smashing them, saying, no, this is illegal, this is this aspect of it is not working, this aspect of it is not fair, and they started a campaign essentially to prevent Uber from growing. But the fact of the matter is, if it works, if it is addressing a big pain, and if it is helping the whole world become a better place, it will essentially going to find its way for adoption.
Amen. Oh, love that analogy. Okay, so my next question piggybacks on everything that we just said. What are your thoughts on the changing landscape with new and emerging technologies to answer the real-world concerns about concrete durability and service life? And I feel like we might have answered that question, but if you don't mind going into it a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Well, in a bigger scheme of things, if, as I said, we embed sensors or a way of data collection to monitor concrete properties from the beginning of its life all the way through production, delivery, placement, and while the concrete is in service, we can not only measure the real-time properties, but we can also predict the behavior of concrete. And so that's a very, very general statement, but that's becoming more and more possible in the sense that with the new types of measurements that are now possible in terms of electrical resistivity measurement, AC impedance spectroscopy, sensors that are becoming really easy to use for these types of measurements, we can predict the durability aspects of concrete. And when I'm saying durability, in particular, I'm looking at the permeability of concrete. And as you know, almost all of the durability issues in concrete are governed by the permeability of concrete, whether it's allowing water to go in or chemicals to go in, or internal chemical attacks. So by the electrical resistivity measurements are providing an easy method of assessing concrete permeability and hence concrete durability performance. And with that, we can overlay on it the ambient condition, the projected conditions, and exposure conditions for that particular structure, and predict how this structure is going to behave over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Wow.
And based on that, estimate what would be the optimum time to think about or schedule possible repair scenarios.
Oh, gosh.
And that's what I think is actually really exciting about predicting when, where, and what is the extent of repair that you need to expect for your structure. And the government, as we know, has a limited budget to do repair in our infrastructure. All of the bridges are aging in North America, and sooner or later they would need repair. But if we can use these new technologies to assess their current state, but also predict their behavior and performance over the next decades, we can help government allocate more efficiently their limited budget on these repairs. And that's, I think, is critical in the landscape of how we're looking at the service life of concrete and estimating and planning for the maintenance of infrastructure. And in concrete durability, this is one aspect of it, the measurements. But the other aspect is the new generation of materials. I think, as I mentioned earlier on this podcast, there are many advancements on the material side. New types of mixtures, new types of cementitious materials, and new types of supplementary cementitious systems that are giving new types of properties to concrete, making it more durable, less permeable, more resistant to different aggressive conditions. And that, combined with the measurements and predictive tools and methods that we have, I think is going to help significantly with addressing the sustainability issues that we have in the construction industry.
Well put. It's absolutely amazing how your technology has helped change the landscape for durability questions, and it's going to be even more exciting to see how it progresses. And the great thing about technology is that while it's taken us a long time to develop or to adopt, and when I say we, I mean the larger construction industry, I'm excited to see how quickly some of these new technologies saturate the industry. And I feel as if within the next 5 years, your technologies and maybe some of your competitors' technologies are going to be market saturation. Saving the world with all the concrete in it. Okay, last question. Okay. 3 books. If you were on a deserted island, and maybe you could bring a satellite phone with you too, so you didn't have to be on the deserted island, but if you were on a deserted island, what 3 books would you bring with you and why?
That's a tricky question. Well, if I'm in a deserted island, what 3 books I'm going to bring with myself? Well, there are many books that I like to read in my spare time there. I think one of my favorites is How Google Works. It's by Eric Schmidt, obviously the CEO of Google when they were at their beginning of their revolution in the internet. That explains how Google as a company operates. What is their mindset about employees and how they attract talent, how they operate in decision making, how is it done at Google. And it's an exciting book because it shows what's behind this revolutionary company and how their structure and organization has enabled people and their, as they call them, smart creatives, to join Google and contribute to all these types of new, advanced, sophisticated algorithms that they have that we use on a daily basis. So that's one of my favorites, and although I haven't read it, I'll take it with myself and read it again. The second book that I just finished reading is The Happiness Equation. Okay. And I don't know if you've heard about it. This is essentially out of a blog that was started a couple years ago on 1,000 awesome things. And and then it evolved to this book that talks about what are the foundations of happiness, and why as humans we are not happy, and how we can practice essentially to become happy, and what are the elements of happiness. So while on that desert, I need to be happy. So I'll take this book with myself.
Yep.
Okay, the third one. Probably there's another book that I like, and that's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Stephen Covey.
And have you heard about it?
Absolutely. His son also wrote a book too. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a classic in a way. So, but for habits to become habits, you have to repeat them essentially. So I'll take that book with myself, and it's really philosophical in the sense that it talks about how you can become a more effective person in your life, essentially, and what are the things that you need to change from your mindset, your behavior, your activities, so that you can use better and more efficiently the limited time that we have. We all have a limited time, so that's a must read for everyone that is experiencing a busy life and busy career.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Going over your list, I have one recommendation for you for a book. The name of the book is called "Is God a Mathematician" by Mario Livio. And it's not a question of Eastern religions versus Western religions. It's more of a question, did we invent math or did we discover math? Fantastic. I actually got to meet the guy a few times, and he's also written a few other books on the golden ratio, the equation that couldn't be solved. But my question to you is on how Google works. You went into the book goes over how Google as a company operates. Do you feel that you and Pooria used the same tactics in creating your company?
Good question. I believe that the phenomenal growth that we've had so far, with 100% revenue growth year over year, sales in 70 countries worldwide, our sensors are used in 3,000 projects worldwide, that would have not been possible without the dedication of the smart creatives that we have at Giatec. And unlike a lot of established companies in this industry sector, we have an absolutely young, bright, passionate, and dedicated team of people in different areas, all the way from civil engineering R&D to software development, hardware development, electronics, marketing, sales, growth, customer support. And it's the unique view that they have developed as part of being in our culture at Giatec that makes them passionate about the change that they see that they are contributing to in the concrete industry, in the construction world. And every time I read a book like that, or we go to a talk, or I listen to a podcast, or watch a TED Talk, I always pick those points about how we can bring and attract talent and bright employees to Giatec, but more importantly, how we can retain them by empowering them through these fundamental ways of operating a company so that they can drive the company. We always tell new employees that you are a CEO of your domain. You need to grow your domain. Whether you are working in R&D or sales or marketing, you are a CEO in that position. And we expect you to own it, grow in that position, come to us, be creative, bring new initiatives, and drive change in your position. And when they are empowered like that, the rest is easy. Like the company grows by itself. It's just, you'll have absolute fun working with people who have that mindset and are growing in that culture.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get that book and read that one. That
yes.
I don't think it's a secret that I've been watching the growth of of Giatec over the last how many years, and some of the things that I've seen. Besides, and you could see in your posts through the LinkedIn, through the individual employees, as well as talking to folks like Roxanne and Sarah and Andrew, that you are empowering. But I think it's more than that, Ali. Where I'd like to end this off is, what are your thoughts about bringing back some resources, some excitement to the concrete and construction industry for the new generation?
That's a good point. And when we started Giatec, we wanted to be a thought leader in the community, not just a device manufacturer, not just a sensor producer, but a thought leader. And that's why all the way from the beginning we had the Concrete Hub blog that we started with a lot of educational material on it. We published a couple of ebooks. We started doing webinars, and then we said, okay, we need to give back as well. So, and looking back at my growth as all the way from when I was a student to today, I said, well, all this has started when I was a student because of ACI and the way that they supported the student activity. So let's give back to the student community and the research community. So we started establishing a scholarship called Giatec Paper Award, and that's given to every year to the best paper, the scientific paper written, published in the field of concrete material and concrete science. This year we had a huge number of submissions to this award as its first year of announcement, and we selected 10, and at the end of the day, we had one winner. Next year, we're going to announce another award to support and provide the scholarships for students who are going to attend the ACI convention.
Wow.
As we are going to grow, I think we are looking at this not really as a marketing aspect of the business, but absolutely something that we believe we need to do. To give back to the community, support the students, and help them become more excited about the concrete world. We need more bright people. We need more bright and smart and passionate people to join this industry, in particular concrete sector, and be the leaders of tomorrow. And so that's why we've started with these different types of fellowships, awards, and scholarships to support student activities, their scientific research and studies, and their trips and travels to ACI convention.
That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. Ali, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot of things to do. I appreciate you giving me the time to answer these questions, and great questions. I'm excited to hang out with you at the next ACI in Quebec. Is there anything else you wanted to close off with before we shut this down?
No. Well, thanks very much, first of all, John, for having me on your podcast. Knowing you over the past years, you are absolutely a driver of change in your domain as well. Like you are, I remember when we started selling Archon, and that's essentially a sophisticated piece of equipment. But you were actually one of the only few labs across the world that embraced that new technology. And you said, I'm going to convince my clients to measure electrical resistivity instead of RCP test. Uh-huh. And I said, well, this industry is not going to change, and let's see what John can do. For us, we're happy that we're selling our device at the time. But we were amazed, and I was always telling Poria, I was amazed at how you got this piece of sophisticated equipment and made it so simple and presented so simply to your clients that it was a no-brainer for them after that they started using this test method instead of the cumbersome, expensive RCP test. Right. So I think you You are absolutely on the forefront of this new way of thinking in the concrete community, in concrete science, and then I'm really glad that we met before, and we are still in touch, and we always value your opinion as someone who's looking from outside, and I'm also looking forward to seeing you in Quebec, our hometown in Canada in a way, and further discuss about the future of concrete industry.
Amen.
Thanks again, John.
No problem. And thanks again, folks, for listening. If you have any questions for Ali or any of the folks at Giatec, don't forget to throw them in the comments section below. Shoot us a direct message or even an email. We're always excited to talk about concrete because don't forget, we are concrete experts. Go concrete, beat asphalt. Have an awesome day, folks.